Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Hilaal Live. Thanks for joining us on channel 347. Also on our live stream, www.hilal.tv. Now, often enough, we do find that our teenagers go through so much with school pressure, community, social activities, also at home as well. And we thought, let's invite, people into studio that deal with our teenagers on a regular basis and give us advice about a very pertinent topic called peer pressure. I'd like to welcome back our panel guest, first of all, Gakeema Solomons. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. How are you doing today?
I'm very well. Thanks for joining us in studio.
Okay.
And then also a residential social worker at Sarki Bartman Center for Women and Children, Sister Ammaarah Arendse. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah so much, ladies, for coming into studio. It's a very, interesting, pertinent topic, and sometimes can be very uncomfortable in the family setup when parents and teenagers don't know how to deal with this topic. And peer pressure has been around for years and years and years. It's not a buzzword that we just made up all of a sudden, as you often see on social media. But Ammaarah, let's maybe unpack, peer pressure itself. I mean, the terminology and maybe the aspects that make up peer pressure.
When we think of peer pressure, we're thinking about the influence that others have on us. And it's usually from the similar age group, similar social setting that you're in, and then obviously people that you look up to.
Okay.
We obviously get negative peer pressure and positive peer pressure, and most often we see the impact of negative peer pressure, especially on our teenagers in our communities. And it's one of the things that is not addressed often enough in terms of this child is acting this way because of peer pressure. We often think it's just other things, but it's very closely coupled with the social ills that exist in our communities.
It's very interesting because, we've got a lot to deal with these days, especially in South Africa. The economy is so tough as well. Parents bring problems home, and can't deal with their issues as well. And that would fall onto the teenagers, all too often. And do you find that there's more challenges now than there were 3-4 years ago? I mean, are those challenges changing and evolving as times evolve?
Definitely. We need to understand that aside from peer pressure that we understand in terms of our friends, it's also the home environment that we come from. So if my home environment is challenging in itself, it's easy for me to be susceptible to peer pressure outside. And then we also have to realize that year by year, the way we engage with the online community increases. And many teenagers express that a lot of the pressure that they feel is from people they don't even know, because I'm following certain people online and they are doing this, and teenagers in certain communities are doing that. So I feel now I need to incorporate it in my life.
Is that the left out teenager feeling that they're just completely feeling left out?
Definitely. And stats show that teenagers check social media 55 times a day.
What?
So if you are looking at your phone 55 times a day, different apps, different content, 100% you're being influenced, whether it's positive or negatively, without even realizing it.
Sure. Gakeema, I mean, you often deal with, teenage issues, challenges as well. And I would imagine that teenagers would open up at times.
They do. It's just the problem of having to get that specific teenager to really open up to you. They do get to speak a lot more at their own teenager friend or a cousin or somebody that is similar to their age. But like we were saying, exactly, social media, if I open up my TikTok page, there's so much to look at. What am I actually going to look at? So that is the first step when it comes to specifically looking at social media. So your child would scroll, but they would find this role model in their mind that they think, obviously, and that is where peer pressure is coming in. So it's actually kind of sad. Also looking at the effects of peer pressure, like what are we talking about?
So we're looking at children that are engaging in risky behavior. So the child that you know as a quiet or a bubbly child is doing the opposite of that. The friends that they're making. So all of a sudden, this friend group is not what you're used to. They're encouraging your child to do things that are out of the norm. So we're staying out late, we are misbehaving. we'll also see that there'll be a decline in the academics at school. So you'll notice my child doesn't even have to be a child that's been excelling, but all of a sudden there's a significant drop and nothing has changed out of the ordinary except the behavior. So those are the kind of impacts that it has on the child in something that you can notice in terms of things like that. And then obviously in the way that they interact, so the relationship between you and your child might differ because you don't know who is influencing that child and how that person or that group thinks of family, thinks of your relationship with your parents, or even just your relationship with your faith, your relationship with friends that you have. And those are things that we kind of look out for when we want to know if your child is being influenced in a particular way.
So let's unpack that. Faced in that situation, and as someone that deals in communities as a social worker, someone comes to you with a persistent problem like that. How would you go about unpacking it in order to remedy that situation?
So we always revert back to the home. What is happening in the home? It's always easy to blame a child, to say this child is acting out, this child doesn't listen. But the reality is, when we come from a strong home where there's love and affection and understanding and the opportunity to communicate exists, it's easy to understand where a child is coming from.
Right.
So when a child is acting out, we need to understand what is the dynamic at home. What is there supervision? Is the child left to their own devices? Who does the child gain the kind of role model behavior from? So often we find that children that are not behaving in a normal teenage way is because they left to their own devices. Now we're spending time outside, and we know that in our communities there are many social ills, and that's obviously linked to poverty and the socio-economic setup that exists in South Africa, and that's where we learn our behaviors. So now because I'm being exposed to all of these things, I'm taking it back home, and mom and dad is coming home from work not knowing anything that I've done for the day. And now the behavior is different because mom and dad is expecting something, and what I've learned throughout the day is what I'm giving back. And then that's where the conflict comes in.
It must be so interesting in that environment as well as a social worker dealing with that, trying to get the balance back to some normality. It must be also quite frustrating that the process may take even longer than usual. Do you find that happening?
Definitely, and oftentimes it's because the services that we need or that our children need is accessible to children, but maybe during school hours. Or we need mom and dad to come on board and they work. And we also understand that the type of jobs that our families and parents work, we cannot just take off. We don't have the luxury of flexibility to say, oh, I need to attend this appointment with my child. So I can be working with a child, but now I need the family to come on board because the gap is also between the mom and the dad and the child. And then we're not able to do that. So it's all good and well to always say, okay, this is what we need to do with the child. But then also, what do we do with the social ills that are influencing our children? The availability of drugs, of alcohol, the negative influences that exist because of poverty. If we can't address that, then we are not doing anything substantial with the child on its own.
I get you.
So as a parent that is working myself, having to come home, firstly, the 55 times of watching your phone is a bit scary. But in actual fact, it's obviously things that you as the family need to engage in, as in, listen, there's no phones in the week, or let's try it this way, or whichever case may be. But now, being a parent, how do I identify, well, you said now, looking at the report and all of these things, how else can I assist my teenager?
So most of the time, teenagers that act out is a means of gaining attention. So having a good relationship with your child in terms of, you can come to me with anything. This is a judgment-free zone. We speak about things.
Speak up,
Yes, I want you, if there's a problem or you feel some type of way, that you're comfortable enough to come to me. So with all of that, and we understand that people are busy, life happens, but there has to be dedicated time that you prioritize to bond with your child. And we do that when they're young. And some reason, as they get older, we feel like, okay, you need more time on your own. it's actually when they need more time together, because they need to know that no matter what's happening outside, the minute I come home, somebody
is going to listen.
Yes, and that person trusts that I am coming from a good space, that I'm not trying to be difficult. I just don't know what to do. I'm confused, and that person's going to provide me with some guidance.
That's very interesting because, all too often we do blame the child, and we say, oh, I've got a naughty child, or, the child doesn't listen, not realizing and unpacking where the problems actually result from. And that's extremely important as well. We're going to take a short ad break. When we come back, we're going to unpack this topic a bit more as well. I'm learning so much as a parent, but also as someone that's in the community that can pass on this type of message to other parents as well. After the break, we chat to our two guests in studio about peer pressure. I hope it's valuable to you. I'm learning so much as well. Do join us after the break. You are still watching Hilaal Live. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Hilaal Live. Tonight's topic, we're discussing peer pressure. We're asking those hard questions on your behalf because sometimes can be uncomfortable as a parent or a teenager to actually talk about a topic like this. We can be very, easily influenced. In studio, our panel, Gakeema and Ammaarah, giving us valuable advice and asking those hard questions as well. Shukran so much once again for coming into studio. Before the break, we chatted about, the influences of what, we call peer pressure and how both parents and teenagers are affected as well. And I think Gakeema had a very interesting question about that.
Yeah, when it comes to, obviously, peer pressure, it's feelings. It is something that we feel emotionally, and sometimes they don't get to speak about it as a teenager. How do we unpack where the teenager handle the feelings?
So many times it roots from self-esteem. So teenagers will feel, but in terms of their development at that age, from 13 onwards, kind of an identity. I'm trying to learn who I am.
Trying to find my way in the world.
Exactly. So now with all these influences, when I'm not strong in trying to, in navigating that for myself, I'm letting everyone tell me who I should be. So it becomes overwhelming. And many times, and we see it often now, is that teenagers develop anxiety and depression because that becomes too much.
Sure.
And when we don't have a support system, it becomes overwhelming.
Right.
And so for a teenager, they might not identify it as peer pressure. They just know there's so much expected of me. I'm supposed to be this type of way. Yet my friends that I look up to, that I think are cool, are doing it a different way. And my parents that have different ideas because of how they grew up are expecting it. So now there's that clash between the people in my age group that are doing certain things and what I'm expected to be like. And it becomes very overwhelming. It's a very stressful stage.
Yeah.
And that's why we speak about parents need to create a safe space for children, especially in that age group of entering their teenage years and the adolescent stage.
Because your mind is developing, you've got their bodies that are developing at various rates as well. So it's all of that that's all mixed up into one big emotion, I would imagine. But one of the things that you often hear that parents and teenagers speak about is that teenagers, especially during those years, find it very difficult to say no to certain challenges, experiences. How would you as a social worker deal with it?
So we encourage children to explore in terms of what you need to understand, what you like and what you don't like, and what your values are. And so when we know that, or when we have a safe space to explore that kind of things, we'll know, okay, this doesn't feel right to me. And when something tells you this doesn't feel right, the best thing to do is to step away and say, you know what, let me not indulge now. Let's see, maybe next time. So already with just next time, it gives you that ease of just, it's not a hard no, but it's also, I'm not ready. Also to avoid areas and groups where you know there will be lots of pressure. So if you know there's a certain group that likes to recruit people to come, we're going out this weekend or we're doing this activity, and you know it's not for you, to avoid it completely. We also encourage children specifically, to know the type of friends that they have. So is it somebody that aligns with what you enjoy? Is it people that align with the type of activities that you want to do? Our teenagers know what is right and wrong. And most of the time, that exploring and not having a safe space to do that, we then try anything because nobody's going to tell me you shouldn't be doing that. Or nobody's going to, if I do it, say, okay, you made a mistake. Let's just see how we can work on it. So it's about trying to say no. If no is not something that you can do confidently, make a joke about it. Oh no, I would be terrible at that. Let me rather try something else.
Okay, that's interesting. I like that.
So
one.
using humor is a good way of kind of removing yourself from the situation without feeling like you now the odd one out. Yeah.
Very important.
Also, looking back to when you were a teenager, and obviously
some of us may think about it a bit longer than others.
It's completely different to obviously what our teenagers are facing in today's life. So looking back onto that, how would you have supported your friend if your friend had to go through these feelings? And at the same time, like you mentioned, there's more to depression. Well, it stems and it goes further and the roots are just stronger. So maybe you can just tell me as a friend itself, how do I assist my friend that is going through those challenges?
So we encourage people to be non-judgmental. So irrespective of the age of the person you're speaking to, allow that person to share exactly what they feel. At the end of the day, they've made the decisions. They are the ones with the thoughts. And so to hold that space and be non-judgmental is the first step. Yeah. And your friend comes to you and they're feeling all this pressure, they're feeling overwhelmed and anxious. You can then suggest, okay, let's do this. Maybe it will help. Maybe we speak to this person, a trusted person that you both know, having support in terms of I'll go with you. If you want to speak to somebody and you're not ready, I'll go with you. I'll hold your hand. We can do this together. Helps a lot because that person then doesn't feel alone and isolated.
Right.
And many times when we're already having these overwhelming thoughts, we think nobody will understand. I'm already alone in this. So if you're a friend and you know, okay, my friend is struggling with this because the school that she's at is putting a lot of pressure on her. Check in with a friend. How are you doing? Sometimes we don't realize the impact of a check-in. And just somebody was thinking about me and somebody thought I might need a cheer up or let's go somewhere. That can play a significant role in helping that person through that difficult time.
As a parent, how do we draw that balance of regular check-ins without being intrusive? Because therein may be quite a few challenges that may come in, because being too intrusive then may push your teenager away from you. How do we get that right?
So depending on the family dynamic, if we're not a family that speak often, it will obviously change from a family that's very close. Yeah,
and you've got a large degree of divorce these days as well, so you have that to consider.
Yes. So it's important. It will obviously come from the parents in terms of what does my child enjoy? Is my child somebody that's talkative? Then we have a regular so when it's supper time, it's always the best. We all sitting. How was your day? What had happened today? Anything new? And if your child is not somebody that does that easily, then it's your responsibility to prioritize it in terms of, I was thinking maybe we should go out this weekend. What would you like to do?
Nice.
And most times teenagers don't voluntarily speak about it.
So you'll be lucky if you get a one-syllable answer these days.
So you need to entice them by doing things that they enjoy. Okay. You come up with a plan this weekend. Anything goes, or these are the boundaries. Tell us what we can do. Once the child has that bond, the conversations will start coming. So it's about creating that space where my child understands and knows that they are prioritized, they are important, and then those difficult conversations will start.
Look, also therapy is also frowned upon in some households as well, and some people feel that it's not necessary. Largely in our community, you find that, how do we get that right as well? And ultimately, it's about creating that balance and creating that harmony in the family.
Yeah. So we need to think about therapy differently. Therapy is a space where we get to offload. And oftentimes we can't offload with the people around us because we are scared that it's going to make them feel some type of way. And you're not sure if that person can hold that space, not be judgmental. So therapy is that space where I'm speaking to my therapist about something that's troubling me, and I don't want anybody else to know. I don't want anybody to judge me. And then that therapist obviously is obligated to not share that with anybody. So I always encourage my people that I work with, you see therapy as a safe space for you to offload and go back to your family as somebody that is in a healthier space, that is functioning, that is not carrying that weight and that baggage with them.
Couple of minutes left. Gakeema, I'm sure our viewers would like to know some interesting details of how we could assist. People like Ammaarah in her position could assist as well.
Ammaarah, also with that, therapy sounds like going for a massage. It's literally you just going and being yourself. So I love the sound of that. And obviously, like Luqman was saying, it was frowned upon back then. But with the modern moms and fathers, and obviously with the divorce rate, you want to get that help for your children. So why not?
Yeah.
Any advice that you'd obviously give to any of our parents wanting to assist their teenager, as well as the teenager that is out there listening to us?
Yeah. So for teenagers and parents, if it's something that you have tried in your household with each other and you still feel like there's a barrier, there are organizations that you can reach out to that offer family counseling, support, as well as just for the children. So sometimes the child just needs that space to, this is what's happening, and then to seek the guidance from there.
Gotcha.
So we do that at the Department Center in terms of it's a walk-in center. Anybody can come and say, I need assistance for myself as well as for my child. We have specific social workers dealing with the children that says, okay, this is how regularly we can have our sessions, and then loop mom and dad in and say, okay, this is how you can assist your child dealing with this.
What if you find resistance from the parents? I mean, that must be a thing. I mean, you probably go through that all the time.
Definitely. I think the resistance is there initially, especially with therapy.
Yeah.
Parents.
We're in denial.
Yeah, we know my child needs help, but I don't need help because I've been parenting well. Exactly.
They say any for me.
Exactly. So we start with the family in terms of we've spoken to the child, we have rapport with the child has shared X, Y, and Z. And if you love your child as much as you say you do, because you've brought them in because you're concerned, then this is your part to play.
Gotcha.
So we work on an encouraging basis in terms of this is a holistic approach. The 16-year-old is not to blame on its own. This is how mommy and daddy can assist.
I like that. Been fascinating. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Jazakallah so much for coming into studio, sharing valuable information, and I'm sure our audience has benefited from that as well. Have a lovely evening. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
And that's how we end Hilaal Live. Thanks for watching us. Be back tomorrow between 5 and 6 to join us then. From the Cape Town team, Sohail Barnes and myself, Luqman Shadrack. Have a great evening. Assalamu alaikum.